What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about new sleepers that could potentially be league winners. These are players who have gained a ton of value during training camp, so if you have an upcoming draft, I would suggest targeting them, and if you've already drafted, I would suggest picking those guys up. With that being said, there's also some players who have lost value during training camp, and we're going to discuss them as well. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. Just before we talk about these players, guys, real quick, you can now do pick'ems on the NHL, on Drafters Fantasy Sports. These are season-long futures you can bet on. There's a lot of good value on here, guys. And by the way, it's available in all of Canada, including Ontario and most US states. Promo code FIREDUP gives you a 100% match deposit up to $100. So 20 gets you 40, 40 gets you 80, 100 gets you 200. And you can use that bonus money to bet on these players. With that being said, guys, here's one pick'em I already did. I put $100 on it. JJ Peterka over 53.5 points. Combined with Timo Meier over 58.5 points. This is $100 to win 300. There's some good value on here, guys. I'm going to make a video about it, but yeah, these are super fun to do. Make sure you download the app, sign up using referral code FIREDUP. That will put it in the promo code section automatically. But yeah, there's more info in the comments, guys. We're also doing best ball draft still. Only 2,000 spots left if you want to get in there. And I'm going to be doing live streams for the next couple of days as well, doing these drafts. So hope to see you in there. Okay, first off, we have to talk about two players. Those players being Nikolaj Ehlers of the Winnipeg Jets and Brandon Hagel of the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's still only training camp and teams are experimenting with lines, so there's no guarantee that these are the power play units that we see going into the season. But with these two guys, they are both currently practicing on the first power play unit on their respective teams. Ehlers is a guy who put up 61 points in 82 games last year, despite averaging less than 16 minutes of ice time per game and being on the second unit. So if he stays on this first power play unit, there's so much upside. They're currently playing him in the high slot. Arniel has talked about Ehlers being a good option there, and they're going to try to see if that works. But they're going to mix things up too in camp. They may give another player a look. So nothing confirmed, guys, but this is a very good sign. And where he's going ADP-wise on most platforms, he could be a massive steal. Now, speaking about Brandon Hagel, obviously getting on the first unit would be massive for his value. So let's talk about that. Last year, Hagel had 75 points in 82 games, with only 7 points coming from the man advantage. So this guy's been a beast even strength. The fact is, if Hagel was on this first unit, there's a chance he could put up 80 plus points. And that means he could be a massive steal in your upcoming drafts. I do want to say, though, that it's looking like they're running a top line of Genso, Kucherov, and Point. And last season, we saw Hagel play with Kucherov for the majority of the year. So you have to factor that in when projecting his points, right? He's going to get less points, even strength, if he's on the second line. I also want to say that there's definitely a chance they put Nicholas Paul back in this first unit to have a big body screening the goalie. But we've seen in 2 training camp days now, them having Hagel on this first unit in different spots. So I'll keep you guys updated. But for now, as a late round target, I'm definitely a fan. Next up, we have to talk about the Drew Doughty injury. He went down. It sounds like it's a fractured ankle. He may miss a couple of months. And with that being the case, Brandt Clarke could be a massive steal in your upcoming drafts. Clarke is a very talented offensive defenseman. He's going to get more even strength minutes because of this. And in my opinion, he's going to be quarterbacking that first line power play now as well. So there is massive value here. There is maybe a chance Jordan Spence is running that first unit, guys. There is that risk, but in my opinion, it's going to be Clarke, and you're probably going to be able to get him super late in your drafts. So yeah, definitely target Clarke. This guy could potentially be a league winner. Next up, we have to talk about the Florida Panthers power play. And what we're seeing in camp right now is Adam Boqvist on that first unit. They could mix things up, guys, but we've seen a couple of days now where this is the case. So I'm targeting Boqvist in my drafts, and I'm avoiding Aaron Ekblad and Gustav Forsling. We've seen what getting on the Panthers power play has done to defensemen in the past, like Brandon Montour. So if Boqvist can stay healthy, there's a chance he puts up 10 to 15 goals, 50 plus points, and a lot of power play points. So this guy could be a massive steal. The next player that gained value in camp so far is Rickard Rakell of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And with that means that Michael Bunting has lost a lot of value. I talked about Bunting being a sleeper because I was pretty sure he was going to be on the first unit, but I guess with a new assistant coach running the power play, that wasn't necessarily 100%. And we're seeing in camp that it's Rakell, Russ, Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. It's going to be Carlson, guys. Carlson's just dealing with an injury. But yeah, that does not mean good news for Bunting. So don't draft Michael Bunting. Draft Rickard Rakell instead. This could change throughout the year, guys, but if it sticks, Rakell is going to be a massive sleeper. Amazing shot volume, puts up hits. He can score goals as well. So yeah, I'm definitely targeting Rakell in my upcoming drafts. Next up, we have to talk about the Buffalo Sabres power play. What we're seeing right now in camp is Thompson, Tuck, Peterka, Jack, Quinn, and Rasmus Dahlin. I talked about Cousins being a sleeper. I thought he was going to be on the first unit, but It's looking like it's going to be Jack Quinn, and Quinn is going very late on a lot of platforms, so you need to target him. With that being said, guys, I'm avoiding Cousins at this point. Only center eligibility on a lot of platforms as well, so I'm just not a fan. But I do want to say that this could change, right? Like, this is just camp. Things can change throughout the year, but very promising news for Jack Quinn, who has massive potential. Next up, we have to talk about this Vegas Golden Knights power play and what it's looking like. Cassidy has said that he expects the first power play unit to be Mark Stone, Jack Eichel, Tomas Hertl, Victor Olofsson, guys, so huge sleeper, and then Noah Hanifin. This means that Victor Olofsson is a massive sleeper, being line one with Eichel even strength, and now in the first line power play. Now the Hanifin conversation is interesting. Cassidy saying this is big for him, but Jesse Granger, a Vegas Golden Knights reporter, said that he asked Cassidy who's going to be quarterbacking that first unit, and he said that they would both get looks on that unit, those guys being Shea Theodore and Noah Hanifin. With all this being said, though, Cassidy sharing his expectations of what this power play is going to look like confirms what I was thinking originally, which is Hanifin being on this first unit. Next up, we have to talk about the Utah Hockey Club power play, and what we're seeing in camp is Sergachev on the first unit and Jersey on the second. This was definitely a big question heading into this season. I expected it to be Sergachev, and that's what we got. Sergachev is looking like he's playing with Keller, Gunther, Barrett Hayton, and Nick Schmaltz on that first unit, so Sergachev could be a massive steal in your upcoming drafts. Sergachev also puts up really good peripherals, so he has that edge there, and there's a chance if he stays healthy, he could put up 60 points. On the topic of the Utah power play, we have to talk about Barrett Hayton. He's currently even strength with Keller and Schmaltz, and he's on this first unit, so he may be a massive steal in deeper leagues. I'm not telling you to target him in shallow leagues, but in leagues with 14 teams or more, he could provide a lot of value. And with that being said, I'm not the biggest fan of Logan Cooley. Cooley already has bad peripherals to begin with, bad shot volume, no hits and blocks, so he was already at a massive disadvantage in a lot of leagues, but if he's not on the first unit, he is not going to have a lot of value. Another training camp update we have to talk about is the first line power play on the Kings. And what we're seeing here is Quinton Byfield on the second unit. Things could change, but definitely not a promising sign for Byfield. And we're seeing right now the player on the first unit be Alex Laferriere. We also saw Laferriere get a look on the first line as well in camp, but then he was on the third line in a preseason game 2 nights ago. So yeah, things are changing, but in general, if I'm in a deeper league and I'm looking for value, I may target Laferriere. With that being said, I am currently fading Byfield on my upcoming drafts just because of this concern. I just think there's a little bit of risk here now if he's not on that first unit because his value takes a massive dip if this is the case. Another training camp update we have to talk about is defenseman Erik Gustafsson on the Detroit Red Wings, quarterbacking that first unit. I expected this to happen. He has previous chemistry with Patrick Kane and Alex Debrincat on the Blackhawks, and as long as he stays healthy, I expect him to be quarterback in this unit. With that being said, if my league didn't heavily value peripherals, I am not drafting Moritz Seider. Seider is great in category leagues and points leagues that heavily value peripherals, but his ceiling is massively capped not being on this first unit. And there's also a chance that they don't give a lot of usage to the second unit this year because we're seeing Debrincat on the first unit, and it might not be the same type of usage that we saw last year. With that being said, Debrincat may be good value in your upcoming drafts because last year, there was a lot of games where he was on the second unit, not getting a lot of power play time. It's looking like he's first line even strength with Raymond and Larkin. It's looking like he's first line power play. And he's a guy that puts up a lot of shots and hits as well. So he may be a big steal in your upcoming drafts, depending on your league settings. And I think there's some bounce back potential as well with this goal scoring. In more training camp news, we have seen Olen Zellweger, defenseman on the Anaheim Ducks, quarterbacking that first unit. They could run distributed usage for both units, so it doesn't mean that this is necessarily game-breaking value, but this is good news for Zellweger, and it does push the stock down of Cam Fowler and Pavel Mintyukov. With that being said, things could change. It's still early in camp, but I'm expecting Zellweger to lead in power play time per game amongst defensemen, and in leagues that don't heavily value peripherals, he could be a steal. Next up, we have to talk about a sleeper goalie that I haven't mentioned at all in my videos. I guess I was sleeping on him, guys, because the more I have dug into this situation, the more I'm liking Samuel Ersson. Based off what I'm reading, it sounds like they want Ersson to be the #1 guy, so he's going to have good volume, and that really matters in a lot of points leagues. And he's also a player that could have really good numbers in category leagues as well. I would definitely target him more in a points league than a category league because it's still the Flyers we're talking about here. But yeah, he could be a massive steal if you're going to fade those goalies early and get those volume guys late. Another training camp update we have here is Brandon Montour not being on the official first unit. It's just training camp. We haven't seen too many days and what they're running, but we're seeing that we had Vince Dunn with the big dogs. In the unit that we saw in camp, we've seen Dunn with Eberle, McCann, Beniers, and Bjorkstrand. And then Montour with Stevenson, Shane Wright, Eli Tolvaden, and Jaden Schwartz. Yes, they distribute the usage for both units, but if he's not playing with the best Kraken players, this will hurt his value. And I'm just not a fan of Montour in general because of this split usage potential and going from the Panthers to the Kraken. So definitely not a fan. Another guy that I'm avoiding right now is Trevor Zegras. I want to emphasize that it's just preseason, but we're seeing in camp them having the first line power play as Troy Terry, Leo Carlson, Cutter Gauthier, Mason McTavish, and Olen Zellweger. This is concerning for Zegras. He only has center eligibility. His peripherals are bad. So yeah, I'm avoiding him in my upcoming drafts. Another training camp update is we're seeing Gustafsson in the first unit. If you thought Burns was going to be on the first unit, I don't know what to tell you guys. Burns is way too old at this point, so this makes the most logical sense, and that's what we're seeing. So you should target Gustafsson in your later rounds if your league doesn't heavily value peripherals, and you should avoid Brent Burns in all formats. Another training camp update we have seen is the first line power play on the Senators. We got this news today. They have Stützle, Batherson, Norris, Tkachuk, and Jake Sanderson on that first unit. This is very good news for Josh Norris and Drake Batherson, but not very good news for Claude Giroux. Things could change, but I'm targeting Norris in my later rounds, and I'm avoiding Giroux where he's currently going. Speaking on the Sens power play, obviously I just mentioned that Sanderson is on the first unit in camp. I'm sure they're going to mix things up. I'm sure they're going to experiment. But this is definitely a good sign for Jake Sanderson. I've talked about Chabot being better suited. I've talked about him being a sleeper. But yes, there is a chance that Sanderson's on this first unit for the entire season. So I'm definitely less high on Chabot now that we're seeing the power play units in camp. And I'm more interested in Sanderson. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents. But if things change, make sure you guys follow my Twitter. I will be updating you in real time. And I'll post a video about new power play lines as well. So that's just what we have right now. But definitely good for Jake Sanderson in fantasy. Next up, we have to talk about the Islanders power play. I still expect Nelson to be on there, but I'm starting to get a little bit concerned that it might be Duclair. Duclair has been getting reps on the first power play in camp, and he's also playing even strength on the first line with Barzal. So yeah, Duclair could be a massive sleeper, and Brock Nelson could be a guy that I'm not going to draft. I will keep you guys updated on this, but I'm not necessarily targeting Nelson anymore, and I may look at Duclair if I'm in a deeper league. Next up, let's talk about the Flyers power play. It's looking like it's Frost, Tippett, Michkov, Konechny, and Cam York. Things could change, but I would definitely target Cam York in my later rounds, and I wouldn't necessarily target Jamie Drysdale. I still think Drysdale has a chance to get on this first unit, but this is definitely a positive sign for Cam York, and it's good for those other forwards as well that I mentioned. So yeah, target Cam York in your later rounds. I will say though, I'm talking about late rounds. Okay, I'm not expecting a massive ceiling for York on this power play and in this offense. So I'm just talking about a deep league sleeper. Next up, we have to talk about this Canadiens power play. It's still preseason, and we saw Laine practicing on the first unit a couple of days ago, so don't overreact too much, but they have Kirby Dach on the first unit currently. This first unit in camp today was Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Suzuki, Dach, and Matheson, and then they had Patrick Laine and Lane Hutson on the second unit. This would mean that Dach would be definitely a big sleeper in deeper leagues and in your later rounds, and it would definitely hurt the stock of Patrick Laine. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, that's what we're seeing so far. Next up, we have to talk about Pavel Buchnevich of the St. Louis Blues. I talked about him being a sleeper, but I think what we're seeing out of camp makes me a little less high on him. The reason I say this is because we're seeing in camp him on the second line even strength, and they've moved him to center. This is not his natural position, and in my opinion, by the All-Star break, he's going to be back on the wing, but I just don't like this for obvious reasons. There's a good chance he struggles moving to a new position. He's not playing with elite players like Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas, and instead he may be playing with Brandon Saad and Jake Neighbors, or Braden Shen and Jake Neighbors. So yeah, this is definitely not good for his value if it sticks. With that being said, he's still going very late on platforms, so I don't mind drafting him, but I'm definitely less high on him. Next up, we have to talk about 2 short-term ads, one of them being goaltender Lukas Dostal of the Anaheim Ducks. Gibson had to get his appendix removed, and he's out 3 to 6 weeks, so in the short term, if you're streaming goalies in a points league, Dostal could get a lot of volume. Gibson's going to be back, so I'm not the biggest fan of holding Dostal long term, but if you need a goalie to get you volume and a lot of points in a points league, he could be that guy. Another short-term ad is Casey Mittelstadt. With Lehkonen not being fully healthy, he's in a non-contact jersey. With Nichushkin not coming back until November, and with Landeskog's timeline unclear, Mittelstadt is currently on the first-line power play. This power play is incredible, guys, so in the first month or so, Mittelstadt could probably put up really good numbers, And for that reason, I would definitely stream him. The last thing we need to talk about is this Jeremy Swayman situation. So let's break it down. Swayman is an RFA. He has not signed a contract with the Bruins, and he's not in camp. There's been a bunch of different reports about them being far apart in money. And what we do know is that the deadline to sign Swayman for him to play in the 24-25 season is December 1st. A lot of people are under the impression that Swayman has all this leverage here, but in my opinion, he doesn't have any leverage. If Swayman holds out and does not accept the offer that the Bruins are going to give him, then he is missing out on a year of salary, and that is not ideal. With that being said, the Bruins have way more leverage over Swayman, but there is a chance that Swayman decides to hold out for a bit, and if Korpisalo is playing really bad, he may gain some leverage there. Ultimately, though, I do not see him sitting out the entire year. I don't see them trading him. I guess he could get traded, guys, but I'm not expecting that to happen. And what I do see happening is them wanting to get this done before the season starts. Yes, Swayman has the same agent as William Nylander, who held out, but I just think that they're going to get a deal done. That's just my opinion, guys. Maybe it's a hot take. I know there's some bad reports coming out about the situation, but I just think they're going to get a deal done before the season starts or very shortly after the season begins. So if Swayman slips far enough in your drafts, he could be really good value. With that being said, if Swayman does hold out, you could pick up Korpisalo and stream him for the time that he's out, okay? Bruins, they have a good defensive core, and Korpisalo could put up solid numbers with an actual defense in front of him. So, yeah, like I said, I think Swayman could end up being good value in your drafts, and if he holds out, you can pick up Korpisalo off the waiver wire and stream him. What I do want to say, though, is that if you draft Swayman, you need to draft Korpisalo as a handcuff. You're probably getting Korpisalo pretty late in your draft, so I would target him in my later rounds if I have Swayman, and then you don't have to worry about Swayman holding out and having no goalie. That's my take on it. We will see what happens, but I really hope that they get this signed very soon. That's the end of the video, guys. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.